Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and this is my second video for tonight. I just finished posting the unboxing video for Simon Says Stamps March 2017 card kit, which I will have linked at the end of this video if you haven't seen it yet. So I'm starting off with some Simon Says Stamp ivory cardstock that comes in the kit, and I cut it in half, so it's 4 1/4 inches by 11, and then I scored it at 5 1/2 inches, so it'll be a top folding A2 sized card. And then I took the remaining piece, and I'm going to use one of the stitched rectangle dies from Simon in two sizes. I'm using one on the ivory cardstock and then a larger die on the pattern paper that comes in the kit. I will have the kit linked as well as everything that I can link individually, because a lot of times by the time people see some of my videos, the kit is sold out. So I will have both options, or as many options anyway, linked in the description box below as well as on my blog. So with the ivory cardstock that I die cut with the stitch rectangle die, I'm using the new Easter egg stencil from Simon, and I'm taping that into place with some micro pour tape. And I chose to use that just because it releases really nicely from the paper and doesn't tear it at all. And I wanted to make sure the edges of that cardstock were covered so that I can scrape on some of this Nuvo Mousse. So I have never used this before. I had no clue what the texture would be like, and it's kind of hard to explain. I was expecting the texture to be similar to texture paste, but it's not. It's a little bit more thick, a little bit more dense, I guess, almost rubbery, I guess is the best way to explain it. It's really hard to kind of describe. But after using it, I like it in using it this way in a stencil, but this also makes more sense why they can recommend using this paste like with a sponge, so you can sponge edges of cardstock. It's one of those things when you see it for yourself and try it for yourself and feel the paste, it makes sense why that would work, because it's not as thin as texture paste. Hopefully that makes sense. But I used it over the stencil and I really liked how it worked. I used all three colors that came in the kit because they're just gorgeous. And I just scraped it over the stencil with my palette knife and allowed the colors to kind of blend into each other. So I've got this multicolored floral egg image, and it's all metallic. It's so pretty. I would say it takes a little bit longer to dry than texture paste as well. But I actually just use my hair dryer, not my heat tool. I think the heat from a heat tool, like an embossing tool, would probably be too much for that, and I didn't want to burn anything. But I just used my hair dryer to speed up the drying so that I could get this video done and up. And once it was dry, I actually took the green apple cardstock that also comes in the kit, and I'm just eyeballing it and using my paper trimmer to create a mat for that piece of cardstock. I used to do this a lot back in the day when I would do a lot of layers on my cards, and people would always ask how I would measure them, and I eyeball it. I'll use the guidelines somewhat on my paper trimmer, but for the most part it's just eyeballing. So I did that and then set it aside. And then the sentiment is from the new Some Bunny stamp set. And at first I was going to stack the two sentiments one on top of each other, and then decided last minute to put them side by side. So I lined those up just on the cardstock there, and then used my acrylic block. And I've got it so it says, "I think you're a good egg." And I'm using some Simon Says slate cardstock that I treated with my anti-static powder tool first. And then I'm going to stamp the sentiment with Simon Says clear embossing ink. And then I'm just going to use some detail white embossing powder that I pour over the sentiment. And then this time I'm going to use my heat tool and melt that really well. So let the heat tool heat up for a few seconds first before bringing it to my cardstock. That just helps minimize the warping so that the embossing powder melts faster. So got that melted. I'm going to funnel my embossing powder back in the container before I do anything else, because I have a tendency to knock that over almost every time if I leave it out. So I did that, and then I just used my hands to remove as much of the anti-static powder from the cardstock as possible. And I'm going to use my paper trimmer again to trim out this sentiment, so I've got it in a more narrow strip. And then once I've got that trimmed out, I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to adhere it to my card or how I wanted it to look. So I just kind of held it up to the finished card here, and then I was like, okay, good. I want to, trim off that end, give it a little notched end there. So I just used my scissors for that. You cut a straight line down the middle and then meet up with each corner. So super quick and simple. And then I did end up cutting another piece of that same slate cardstock to mat the floral pattern paper, just kind of tie it all together. So I adhered that flat to the mat, and then I did the same thing with my main piece here, and I wasn't sure at this point if that Tonic Nuvo paste was completely dry, so I put the adhesive on the pattern paper first, or on the green cardstock first, and then adhered the egg piece to that, making it just simpler so I didn't smush it if I flipped it over. And then I adhered that to the pattern paper with some foam tape, and then adhered the sentiment. So once I've got everything lined up, I can now adhere that to my card base. So by this point, because I'd set things and I'd gone off and done, you know, errands and different things with the kids and etc., this was good and dry, so I was able to flip it over, apply my adhesive, and adhere that to my card base. And then for the inside of the card, I have this remaining floral pattern paper left over, so I decided to just trim down 2 strips of the same width, so I could just add that to the inside of the card, keeping it fairly simple, but, you know, tying it all together. You guys know me, I love finishing the insides of my cards. So I trimmed down the 2 strips, and then I grabbed another sentiment from that Some Bunny stamp set, the Happy Easter sentiment, and I grabbed Simon Says Slate ink, since that'll coordinate perfectly with the slate cardstock used on the outside of the card. So I just put the strips of pattern paper where I planned on adhering them on the inside of the card, but didn't adhere them yet. So I can stamp my sentiment first. And then once I was happy with the sentiment, I like to give myself the option in case I need to cover that with a pattern paper, if I stamp it crooked or anything like that. You know, if I mess up, I've got an option to fix it. So it was stamped fine, so then I can apply the adhesive to these strips, and I just adhered them both and then just flipped over the card so I could trim off the excess. And that finished off this card, just really quick and easy and fun, and I just let that Nuvo paste take center stage, no other embellishments, because it's just so pretty. So as always, I will have links below the video to my blog post with links to all the supplies used. All that info will be in the description box below. Thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, and commenting on my videos, and I will see you all very soon in the next one. Bye!